Thank you very much. I just want to have a quick show of hands. Who heard me speak yesterday at the pre-conference seminar? Quick show of hands. Okay, so folks, you're going to hear a couple of themes repeated, but for the vast majority of you people, you're going to hear my message for the first time. For yesterday's listeners, I'm going to cover some of the material in my second book called Willing Wisdom. That's going to be available today. This is an enormous subject. The subject of transitioning family wealth, whether that is an operating business or liquid cash or property, is a huge issue, primarily because we have aging business owners like never before in this country. How many people in the audience are founders? Quick show of hands. All right. How many people are second generation operators? All right. About 50-50. Third generation? Fourth generation? Interesting. We had a couple of fourth generations yesterday. Family businesses, 9 out of 10 firms in this country, doesn't matter what sector, whether it's manufacturing, retail, or marinas, are family owned and controlled. Family ownership is the most predominant form of ownership control in the world, and they're not going away. Family businesses are not going away. Family businesses all around the world, whether it's Asia that I'm speaking, or South Africa, or Europe, they are the fastest growing form of organization, and they are the most profitable. All the studies show, a recent Harvard study shows that when you put a family business beside a non-family business, the family business will outgrow, outperform in every metric, margins, earnings, the non-family business. So there is something interesting and inherent about family ownership. And what is it? I know, having run a family business, we work in these family businesses like it's something we own, whether we own it or not. We're working for pride and legacy and commitment. That's what gives these businesses so much competitive advantages. And yet what's curious is that the very qualities that give family businesses competitive advantages are often the same dynamics that actually lead family businesses to last shorter than a non-family business. It's a paradox. The things that give family businesses advantages are the things that actually turn and work against a family business. The family relationships, family dynamics, money, that intersection of money and relationships in a family business is a complicated and emotional problem for many, many operators. When I wrote Every Family's Business in 2008, I have to tell you, I had no plan to become a speaker. I had lived a family business experience. I had worked in my father's business. I had actually joined in 1999, and that was a business that he had started in 1973. So I was 37. I was quite old in the world of family businesses, where many kids will kind of graduate either from high school or college and enter into the family business right away. It's kind of all they know. My family business story actually goes back even further. My great-grandfather had a tire distribution business. My grandfather worked in that business. That business got sold in the 1940s, and the wealth was inherited. And my grandfather started with my great-grandfather the tradition of holding family meetings. I'm going to talk about the role of family meetings and the way in which you folks can have family meetings to talk about some of these difficult subjects. Who is going to get the family business? How will money be inherited? Do you have a will? The sharing of will. So I'm going to come back to the family meetings. My grandfather inherited a significant amount of money. He started a chemical manufacturing business, and that business actually went on to become the most successful of our family businesses. It was a publicly traded company with plants in Texas and Canada and sales offices around the world. That business was ultimately sold for over $100 million. My father worked in that business. He was not passionate at all about that business, and that business was ultimately sold, and my father inherited, and he took his inheritance, and he started a plastics company in 1973, and you know that that's the business that I joined in 1999. That's the business I ran as CEO for 8 years, and that's the business that we sold in 2007. February of 2007, we were a manufacturer. Does anyone see a pattern in our family, other than the fact that we can't keep a job? We start them. We run them. We sell them. We don't fall in love with our business. We never confuse our love of business with a love of a business. We really love commerce, and we teach our kids. We involve our kids in our businesses, but we make it absolutely clear at an early age through the use of our family meetings, where we bring kids, and I'm going to talk about how I've attended, are you ready for this? 47 annual consecutive family meetings. At 5 years old, I attended my first family meetings. We use these meetings to impart one simple idea, one very contrarian idea that many of you will absolutely disagree with, and I'm okay with that. This is not about me being right and you being wrong. It's just that this is what has worked for our family. In our family meetings, we impart the wisdom that a business is there to make money. A business either grows or it shrinks. It gets bigger or it gets smaller. Businesses do not stay the same. And there is something in our family culture that reminds us that as business owners get older, they lose their appetite for risking capital. This is a kind of a universal truth, whether it's farming organizations, conventions that I'm talking to, or manufacturing. It is very interesting that as the controlling shareholder gets older, he loses an appetite for risking capital. Now, folks, do businesses need money to grow? They absolutely do. Money is the blood of an organization. It is what keeps a business growing and ticking. And when owners who get old and feel uneasy or wary about concentrating their asset in one business, in one stock, they start to turn off the tap. They start to choke those businesses of capital, and the business actually tries to go sideways. Business owners who are getting older are trying to run businesses that go sideways, not growing really fast, not shrinking. No one wants their business to shrink, but they lose that appetite, that drive, that commitment to grow exponentially. And of course, as businesses aren't growing, we know that they're shrinking. So it's an interesting thing that only 30% of family businesses make it to the second generation. So it's interesting. We have half the room here are second gens. Only 30% of first gens will get the business into the hands of second gens. And only 10% of that 30% will make it to the third generation. So stated differently, for those of you who put up your hands as founders, you have a 3% chance of your grandkids owning and operating your business. Now, I got to tell you that is a long odds indeed. In fact, you don't have to go to Vegas to go gamble. You are already there. Just step into your office on Monday morning. You're in Vegas. If you think that your job is to build a business that you are going to pass on for free, that you're going to gift to your kids and they're going to gift to their kids and to their kids and to their kids, you're really playing a very dangerous game. It's a contrarian message because the popular culture, without question, all of the books that have been written on this subject have carried a very traditional narrative. And that narrative has gone something like this. A successful business is old. A successful family business is a multi-generational business. It's measured in generations. So culturally, S.C. Johnson, a family company. It's in our consumer marketing, this idea that old is good. Fourth generation, clearly more successful than third generation more successful than second. And it's a kind of insidious idea. When you look at the data, you can see that the average firm in this country lasts 27 years. 27 years. It is a really, really appalling statistic, and it's not a commentary on how smart you folks are, or the next convention that I'm going to speak at, or the one after that, or the one after that. The number is roughly the same. 27 years across industries, across sectors, that's the average length of a business. We don't want to talk about that. We are far more interested in hearing from speakers and reading books on how to build businesses to last. We love that industry legend who comes and starts a business and he makes it to the second or third or fourth generation, and then we cling to that data point and we say that is a successful firm. It's old. Old is good. Folks, I got to tell you, I'm the founder of a publishing company now, and I feel like a fourth generation family business. It has notionally nothing to do with plastics, chemicals, and tire distribution, and yet paradoxically it has everything to do with those firms. I wouldn't be here without those firms. What I'm trying to do in my books and in my public lectures is to reshift, to redefine what a family business is, from being a building with your name on it to a set of values that you pass on to your family, that you pass on to the next generation, where you impart a profound wisdom about the importance of risking capital, the importance of being passionate about what you do. In every single one of generations of our family, the next generation, the succeeding generation, has not had a passion for the previous generation's business. And there is something that has resided in our family culture that has allowed for that expression of independence, that we have not only allowed for it, but encouraged the next generation to not necessarily come into the business and take it over. It's a different idea. At the center, at the very core of that idea, is not about management succession planning, starting our kids off in the back, bringing them through the factory into sales and admin, and then into the corner office and assuming leadership positions. That's management succession planning. Most of you are doing a pretty good job of that. What I'm talking about is ownership succession planning. If you look at the title of today's talk, it's about protecting family wealth. We are, as a culture, reticent to think and plan for the most inevitable event in life. And what is that, folks? It is death, and incapacitation, which usually precedes death. We are dying and getting aging in a very different way. It used to be that we would actually have a heart attack and actually die. I mean, now what happens is we have a health event, we go to the hospital, there's an intervention, we actually survive. We actually come back and we kind of go on with our lives, we work, get back into our businesses, we kind of mend, but we languish, and we are living vastly longer. This is creating profound complications to the family business transition dynamic. It used to be that you'd get sick, you'd die, and then the kids would kind of inherit the business. Well, actually, the shares have always gone to mom first, right? So in the absence of a well-articulated and well-thought-out business succession plan, dad, quite literally dad, the guy, statistically, we predecease our... We would have a health event, we would die, there was very little planning in place, and the shares would transition to our spouses, our wives. Folks, I got to tell you, I get more phone calls from elderly women whose business owner husbands have predeceased them, and you know what they tell me? They want to bring their husband back from the dead and kill them themselves. It is insane. It is crazy. What happens? If you know, I'll tell you, there are so many spouses, they don't even have a front key to the office. They have never chaired a board meeting. They don't know the lenders. They don't know the customers. They do not have the intimate relationships with suppliers and customers. And I got to tell you, if you want to watch a family business destroy its value, not in months, but in weeks and in days, just stick around, because we are right in the middle of the single greatest transition of family businesses ever. That leading edge of the boomers, born in 1947, started to turn 65 in 2011. Every single day in this country, 10,000 people turn 65. Try to close your eyes and picture that. We are a graying nation, and we are business owners in record numbers, and we are struggling to get this piece right. We are struggling to get the transition of our family business right, and what are we doing? I'll give you a hint. Feel how uncomfortable that is? That's a little window. I know what you guys are going through. I know it. I've been there. This is your most difficult deal by far. It's your last deal. And either you will do a fantastic job of preparing heirs, of preparing yourself and your spouse for a long and expensive retirement, or you will let silence be the great destroyer of family wealth, and you will do nothing. You will dither. You will procrastinate, you will put off, and you will say, well, I'll get to it next season. Let's just get through the launch, and I'll get to it next season, and we'll get serious about this stuff. Folks, I'll tell you right now, in half this room, right down this middle, let's pick on this half. Half of this room does not have a will. 125 million American adults do not have a will. Half this room. The other half of the half that does have a will, it's grotesquely outdated. You probably have executors that have have died. I'm talking about the most basic planning that is not in place. When a young Bobby Kennedy stepped up to the podium in 1968 and took a bullet for his nation, the good news was he had a will. The bad news is, who do you think his executor was? How's this? Wow, that's electric. 1963, JFK dies. If you think estate planning is the preserve of the rich and famous, that if you're rich and famous, you're going to have better estate plans, folks, I could go on all day long and talk to you about how the wealthy and the famous have mangled their estate plans in such public and bizarre ways. This issue is not about being rich. I think, in fact, some of the families that get this part right, that prepare heirs and transition wealth in really important and successful ways, are the ones that have modest wealth. The bigger the numbers, the more complex the asset mixes, the more difficult it is for families to broach this subject with their family. So consequently, what we have is silence. We have people putting off and delaying the writing of wills. Furthermore, we have people, business owners, who have they have done some business succession planning, so they have a shareholder agreement. They may have minority shareholders, and they have a will. So they've got the right documents in place. But a problem often is that they've used two different lawyers. They have a lawyer who does their commercial work, who prepares the shareholder agreement, and they have a lawyer who does maybe private real estate, personal stuff, and they have a will. Guess what? I guarantee you there are many people in this room whose two documents, shareholder agreement and will, say completely the opposite things. So the will says I want all my assets to be split equally between my heirs, and my shareholder agreement says that I want my shares upon my death to transition to the minority partners. They have first rights of refusal. So a business owner dies. Typically the wife will show up at the office thinking that she owns it, and the minority shareholders say, Barbara, great to see you, and I'm sorry for your loss, but what are you doing here? And here we have a classic situation where you know where that's going. Who is getting wealthy in this country on the backs of business owners who aren't having the most basic conversations and putting in place really basic agreements to help transition their wealth upon the most obvious event in life? Who do you think that is? You got it. How can we have 125 million people in this country without a will? How many of you, quick show of hands, have ever received a letter from an attorney saying it's been 1 year or 3 years or 5 years since you updated your will? If you've had the birth of a child or a grandchild, if you've bought a business, sold a business, a major life event, check one box, you should come in and we should talk. How many of you received that letter from your lawyer? Okay, three, four. Wow, stick with that lawyer. That guy is so rare. Man, you should bronze him. Why do you, get a new lawyer. They're obviously out there. Find a lawyer who's going to be a little bit proactive and help you get these documents in place. Moreover, let me tell you a little bit about our family meetings that we've had. I told you I had 47. I've been to 47 family meetings. We invite our spouses, more the merrier. We use these family meetings to really strip away the secrecy in our family about money. Because in the final analysis, folks, there are no secrets in families. When folks die, it all comes home to roost. So, you can understand that, you can kind of fight that, or you can embrace it and use it to your advantage. And I would really encourage you to take some risks and have some family meetings, and not only just write a will, but here's the rub. Willing Wisdom, my second book, talks about the importance of reaching out and seeking input from the people you intend to share your wealth with. It's a kind of a crazy idea, I know. Asking your intended beneficiaries, not just your family, but also your charities of choice, how they will dispense and use the wealth that you leave them. How many of you folks are having those kinds of meetings? It's very interesting how little attention we give to the biggest asset of our life, our entire net surplus upon death. I don't know about you, but when I buy a birthday present for my wife, and I actually get it right, which is incredibly rare, but I find something that she wants and needs, and I find it, and I get it early. I am so excited. I usually can't wait to the day of her birthday. I ended up giving it to her before her birthday because I'm so excited. What I'm trying to do in these lectures is trying to create that same excitement, not just for a birthday gift, but for our entire net worth. How is it that we can tap into that excitement and prepare our children and our charities to receive our wealth in a way that releases potential? Your gifts that you leave your family and your charities will do one of two things. It will release potential, or it will accelerate a demise. You know, one of the great things in my journeys, I've met so many interesting people. And I'll tell you, I've met kids that if they inherit $10,000, they will be dead in 30 days because of their addictions. And I have actually met, recently actually, a gentleman who inherited $100 million about 10 years ago, and he's turned it into $1 billion. And there you have it. There you have the two extremes. Money releases potential, or it accelerates demise. How will it be for you and your family? Does it not behoove us all to explore that in our own family to find out what we have? What do we have? But to be so careless and so indifferent to have that conversation, to seek input, to build and write wills that are thoughtful and meaningful, I think is the greatest gift of all. In fact, the title of the book, Willing Wisdom, it's a double entendre. It's a double meaning. It's not about how to write an awesome will. There's no magic formula. My will be different from your will, and your will will be different from these folks over here. Every will should be different, is different. But what is it that makes a will special? It's the conversations that precede. It's the conversations that precede the leaving of the wealth that I think provide families the most value. This is tricky stuff. Most of you will be intimidated by this subject. Most of you will put off and delay. I really encourage you to involve your trusted advisors, whether it's your attorney, your accountant, your wealth advisor. Having those folks in the room to at least facilitate and write down the answers to the questions that are in the book to shape this conversation, I think that is essential. And I think if you folks can do that, you will leave businesses, you will leave marine dealerships, you will leave wealth to families or not in ways that will, I think, be your greatest legacy. What I can tell you is that if you have no will, does everyone know what happens when someone dies without a will? That's right. The state steps in and they apply a rigid formula. The legal term is you're deemed to have died intestate. The state that you live in has a really specific formula for chopping up your assets according to that formula, and I guarantee that that formula will be very different from the giving decisions that you would have if you sat down and thought about it. Often people will say, why spend $300 on a will when the government will just simply divide my assets the same way? Well, most of you don't know what your state formula is. It's different in every state. Different formula applies in every state. Certain amounts go to spouses, more percentage goes to kids, nephews. It's different. You need to inform yourself. So how do you do this? How do you start your first family meeting? There is, without question, some risk involved. But as business owners, you absolutely know, that when you take risks in business, what's the flip side of risk? It is reward. And same thing with families. And successful dynastic families do the same thing. They take risks. They take risks in preparing their kids by having conversations. What the wealthy do, we talk in glowing terms about, well, they're from an old family money. Well, how the hell do you think they got old? How do you think young money got old? They didn't trip over some kind of magic bean in the forest. I mean, they thought about it. They work at it. And the most successful family business in the history of this country are the Rothschilds. 350 years they've been at the business of making money and passing wealth intelligently and preparing heirs. They spend a tremendous amount of time connecting their kids to their money. When kids, the Rothschild children, inherit money, and they inherit a lot, I can tell you that that they're encouraged to risk it. I once, when my first book was released, I took a phone call from a Rothschild, And I thought, oh my goodness, this is amazing. My little book is starting to influence and shape the financial fortunes of one of the most successful family businesses. And this guy said, no, Tom, my name was a Rothschild, but you got it all wrong. We got trimmed in about 1850, where I'm a working stiff in upper state New York. I'm one of those poor Rothschilds. And I said, well, tell me your story. He says, well, what happens in the Rothschilds, at a very early age, they start to talk to their kids about money. They don't shroud their money in secret. They tell their kids how much money they actually have in the family. And when the kids are old and the stories are told, stories about how the Rothschilds made their money, connecting the kids to that money early and consistently. Then when the kids become 21, they inherit a considerable amount of money. And then they also tell the kids at 21 that they can buy into various businesses or one business, and they have many businesses. The Rothschilds never gift an operating business to their kids. The Rothschilds gift cash and encourage the kids to risk that cash to buy into the business. Now, what do you think the Rothschild kids do? Some take the money and they consume it. Some take the money and they have addictions and they blow it. Guess what happens when you're a Rothschild and you blow your money? Chop, chop. They trim the family tree, you're done. They do not suffer fools. That's why this family is so dynastic and has been so successful. They give their children lots of preparation. They give their children lots of connections to the money. They introduce them to their personal and professional networks. But boy, oh boy, when those children do not show a propensity to take inherited wealth and treat it with the respect that it deserves, they are done. They are done like dinner, and they move on and they invest further into the kids that have shown a propensity to invest and create wealth. Now, what's interesting is that those Rothschild children are also encouraged not just to reinvest and to take their inheritance and invest into family businesses, their own businesses, but to start their own. The Rothschilds do an amazing job of creating space around them so that the children aren't suffocated by the lore and the reputation of the great founder. So many kids who succeed their parents are dwarfed by the awesomeness of their parents. Their parents create such a shadow. They create such they suck the oxygen out of a room, and the kids, it doesn't matter how smart and educated they are, they feel so overwhelmed by the success of the previous generation that they crumble under their own expectations, and they do less than they can. So the great dynastic family business owners make themselves vulnerable and share in the context of a family business what has worked and where, quite frankly, they have failed. One of the first questions in Willing Wisdom, one of the first questions that we ask in our family meetings every year, we go around the room and we ask everyone to pick one word that best describes our family and to tell a story on why we selected that word. And now it's very interesting. It's a very gentle word. It's a very kind of a gentle way of introducing a family conversation about money and ultimately who's going to get what, when, and how. But it's very interesting to go around a table and to listen to the stories. We have lost our oral tradition. We have lost the art of storytelling in our families. We're so busy. We don't even eat together as families. That number has been declining for 25 years. We are so busy making money, we have forgotten about how we prepare the next generation to protect the money that we're making today and to transition it in a way that pays respect to our hard work. That's what I'm trying to start today. That's what I'm trying to rekindle in ourselves, that old tradition of storytelling about how we make money. Question number 2 that we address in our family. We ask everyone in the room to share their interpretation of how our parents made money. So when I ask our kids how they think I made money, it's very interesting to hear their view of me. When I answer the question, and my parents are in the room as well with our kids when we're doing our family meeting, I'm telling a story about how I think my father made his money. What this is doing, we've inherited money. We have huge advantages in our family. It brings us down to earth and makes us accessible to our own kids. It reminds our own children that we had some help. There isn't a business owner in this room who hasn't had the help of someone. Whether it was a parent, a friend, a colleague, an industry association person, someone had a hand in your financial success. And what this second question is trying to do is to pull that gratitude and put it onto the table, and really for the benefit of your own children to understand that you didn't do it alone. That while you've been successful, you have been the recipient of help. It makes you normal. It makes you human and accessible. What happens right now with people and their wealth as they're considering their will? They often sit down, if they sit down at all with their family, and they say, I've got the money, and if we're going to have a conversation, I'm going to ask you what you're going to do with your inheritance, and the person with the best answer is going to get the most money. We use and abuse our control, and it turns on us in the most peculiar way. I've already shared with you that we're dying and aging in a very different way. I can tell you that my grandmother, who died at 98, died only 5 years ago. She had long-term care. We spent $2 million of after-tax money providing 24-hour care 365 days a year. $2 million to provide care for my grandmother. Most people in this room are underestimating how expensive and how long your retirement will be and how expensive your care will be. While we spent $2 million on our care, I can tell you that my parents provided the direct oversight of that care. It was exhausting work. That is going to be the way it plays out for your folks. Who is going to provide the oversight of your care? It's going to be your family. What kind of family relationships will inform the kind of care you receive? The family relationships where you've developed a culture of meeting and conversing about assets and who's going to get what, when, and how, or the kind of relationships that are shadowed by silence, around secrets about how much money you've accumulated, and whether or not you've left the kids with the idea that maybe they'll have to step up to the plate and fund your care. People don't know. Kids don't know. We culturally have found the subject of talking about money so awkward that we've stumbled over the biggest opportunity to pull our family together, using our money and our businesses to create tighter-knit families. Not tighter-knit family businesses, but tighter-knit families that show up in the quality of care that we all receive, I think is one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves. We think a will is for the benefit of others. A will is for the benefit of you folks. And when you die without a will, you leave questions. I tell you, the lawyers that I interviewed for this book, over 500 lawyers, told me about how they would be called into the hospital to do bedside wills, and it was just, they just have horrific stories of people trying to communicate, and deal with complex matters. I mean, it just did not contribute to the dying process or the aging process at all. Throw in a family business, and you've got even more complications, more distress. What happens when someone like you, business owners, die without a will and you've got an operating business? That asset is treated like a 401k. It's divided up equally according to the state formula. That's right, the shares of your marine dealership goes to a whole bunch of people. Not just one person, but a whole bunch of people. If you've got a spouse and family members, that's how that asset gets treated, no differently than cash. Quick show of hands. Who here is in business with all of your brothers and sisters? Not one, but all of your brothers and sisters today. 1, 2, 3, 4? 4. 4. It's not that being in business with your brothers and sisters, all of them, is a bad thing. It's just statistically not the chosen path for the vast majority of the people in this audience. Love my brother, was not in business with him. That's what happens when you die without a will. You will thrust brothers and sisters and surviving spouses into business as partners. In the absence of shareholder agreements or wills, that will be your legacy. People won't remember the 25 years of hauling boats out of the water and fixing and selling and doing all what you do. Long hours, tight margins. They're not going to remember that. They're going to remember and scratch their head on why that business owner, that smart guy, that hardworking guy, failed to plan for the most obvious thing in life. That's what they're going to remember. That becomes your brand. In the absence of a will, there's no executor. So in the absence of an executor, there's no one who is dividing your assets according to your prescribed wishes. So the government, again, appoints a public trustee. Boy, do those guys love that job. Boy, do they love to take that big honking percentage of the division of your assets. Again, the attorneys are getting rich off the backs of you folks, particularly business owners. It is a big, big number. It's appalling. It's another reason why those 4 people who put up their hands that are getting letters from their lawyer, keep that lawyer. Keep that lawyer. He's making $300 or $400 on writing a will for you folks and giving up 3 to 4% on your total assets. 3 to 4%. Do that math quickly. Scribble down what your net worth is times 3 or 4%. That's what that lawyer is going to make for wrapping up your utility bills, by wrapping up the sale of your business, by wrapping up, you know, for a year's job. And they're going to put a clerk on the file to do most of the work. It drives me to distraction. That's something that can be done so quickly and relatively efficiently. We're leaving so much money on the table, and it drives me crazy. I'll tell you, in the absence of a will, there is also no provision for the distribution of assets to a charity of choice. Many people will express their giving intentions to their spouse and say, look, if I die, make sure that some of our money goes to our church or to a local hospital or another favorite cause, a community foundation. You know, make sure they get $100,000. Well, just because you've said it verbally does not make it a contract, does not make it binding. It will not happen. Often what happens when, let's go to the opposite end, when parents look at kids and they see their kids have good lifestyles, they have houses and boats and the kids their education's paid for, often parents will say, well, let's leave it all to charity. I think my money will ruin my children, so let's leave it all to charity. What do you suppose the fastest growing area of estate litigation is right now? That's right, kids suing charities that were named in wills by parents who didn't communicate their giving decisions before they died. One of the reasons we have family meetings is it actually makes our estate and our estate decisions impenetrable. They become ironclad. Most wills get challenged on the basis of incapacity, that the person wasn't of sound mind. But when you have a family meeting and you seek the input of your beneficiaries, when you have consistent annual meetings on the same day to review the same decisions, those are not impetuous decisions. Those are ironclad decisions that are unassailable. They cannot be challenged in court, and your last wishes will be fulfilled. That is a great gift to charities. It's a great gift to your family. Now, how can we start? How can we start to redefine what a family council meeting is? And how can we roll into the family business this idea of not gifting a business to our kids? For those of you who weren't at the pre-session, this is a huge subject. 24 million family businesses with business owners without a will. Those businesses are going to move to someone, whether you like it or not. Who is the best owner for your business? Do you know that the average search firm, when they're looking for a president of a business, will start with 1,000 resumes? 1,000 resumes. That 1,000 resumes will get whittled down to 100, then they'll interview about 25 people. The 25 people will get narrowed down to about 10, then they'll have 2 interviews, then they'll narrow it down to 3 candidates, they'll have 3, sometimes 4, and then they'll select 1 CEO. But they're starting with a pool of 1,000. Now let's come back over here into the world of family businesses. What's the likelihood that the best CEO to create value in your firm is going to come from a pool of 2 or 4? They're really long odds. It's a little insight. It's not to suggest that the best CEO isn't going to come from the family business. It's just that statistically, it's a long shot. That's why only 3% of family businesses last to the third generation. 3%. When operating businesses are gifted to the next generation, how does the next generation say no? Who would say no to a free family business? You don't. You tend not to. You take the gift. You take it out of a sense of obligation and duty. I know I stepped into our family business after a career in banking. I joined our family business at age 37 out of a real sense of duty and obligation. I was also curious about running a business that size. We had a plant in Missouri, a plant in Canada, international sales. It was a big new challenge for me. I was curious. But I can tell you, I have seen kids who have gone to college and become dentists get lured into farming operations. I heard a story last week about a guy who has 3 hotels and his son is running one. His son's a doctor. Children cannot say no to their parents when it comes to the subject of entering and working in the family business. There is such a sense of duty and obligation and burden. It's difficult for the kids to say no. And often those kids are underpaid. There are as many underpaid kids working in family businesses as overpaid kids. And why is that? Because the kids are told that, don't worry, one day, all this will be yours. And the kids are wondering, really? When? How much is this worth? I mean, I don't really get to see the financial statements. I know I'm working really hard and long, and I have my own family. I have my own bills to pay. And one day this will all be mine. When? When will it be mine? How will it be mine? Will it be when maybe one day mom and dad get old enough and they have excess cash, they'll just give it to me? Or will I have to wait for that unspeakable day when they die? When they die. When my book was first released, let me share with you a very brief story. I did a radio phone-in interview, and it just generates a lot of phone traffic and emails, and I took a phone call from a prominent billionaire, and he said, I heard your interview, and you have a very different message for family business owners. Can you help us? We're a family in transition. And I said, look, I'm not a consultant. I really am not a consultant. I don't think there's much I can do to help you. And he implored me, and I have to say I was curious. I went down. I was escorted to their boardroom. Beautiful boardroom, oak-paneled boardroom. And in shuffles this old guy. He's kind of hunched over, and he said, I read your book. And he started to tell me a little bit about his business. And I said, hang on, before you go much further, why don't you invite your son in and we can have this conversation together? And he looked at me and he said, I am the son. My 95-year-old dad will be here shortly. Folks, this is what you're going to see in your industry. You guys are going to, this is the great news. You're going to live a long time. You really are. The medical advances are impressive. You're going to live a long time, but it's also going to delay the transition of your business unless you get out in front of this issue, unless you take the tiger from the tail, unless you drive this issue. This issue will drive you crazy. There is absolutely no joy in being a business owner and having financial success knowing that this business, that you have not prepared either an heir to purchase your business, you have not prepared an outside buyer or key employee to buy your business. There is no, I know it, there is no joy in sitting there in a business that is ill-prepared to transition. The great business owners do a great job of preparing, not at the last minute. It's not something that they rush to do, but they start early and they prepare multiple options to sell the business to the highest bidder. Whether that sale is inside the family or outside the business or outside the family, they are working on cultivating buyers every single day. That is part of the job of a leader. It's not something that can be done by operational people. The job of an owner is to grow the business, but also to protect that growth and to protect it by finding someone who will buy it for a multiple of its cash flow. That takes work. In 2002, I no longer wanted to buy my father's business, and I revealed that as we went through the questions in our boardroom. So I moved from being a buyer, and my father moved from being a seller. We both became sellers in 2002. We sold our business in 2007. We had no debt. We had technology. We had really everything that a buyer would want. It still took us 5 years, and we got our full sale proceeds 4 years after the close. So it was almost 10 years to the day. From the time that we started to sell, 10 years to get our full entitlement. Most business owners underestimate how difficult and exhausting it is to sell a business. When do most business owners get serious about their estate planning and conversations about wills? When do they get serious about preparing their business to transition? When? when they get sick, when they get old, when they get tired. This stuff is exhausting at the best of times. When you go to sell your business, you guys know that you want really good financials. You want to see a nice little hockey stick. You want to see that line going up, sales, earnings, margins. That's a great story. Those are fun businesses to sell. But when do we get serious about selling our business? When we have a health event. And now you've got two jobs. You've got to get the business repaired. You've got to get the business prepared and back on its feet, and you've got to start entertaining buyers. It's a full-time job. If there's one thing you take away from this presentation is you cannot do this by yourself. This idea that you're going to nip over to the Holiday Inn, meet with a competitor, kind of negotiate a deal, work on the terms, this will take about a week, and then you'll walk out of your front door one day with a big check, probably more than you ever thought. Folks, that is in the movies. It does not happen that way. You cannot sell your business on your own. You will require the active input of your key employees, and by key employees, I mean not someone who's a nice guy and really, important to the business. I mean the person who is hit by a bus, really, you miss them. They're impactful to the operations of the business. You need them to be part of the conversation with the buyers. The buyers are buying management. They want that person in the room. They want to meet them. They want to see what they're buying. You can see that secrets around your exit they're not going to serve anyone. You're not going to be able to sell your business. Now, the conundrum is if you've got a family business, just like when you're contemplating your will, if I tell someone in advance of this event, they are going to get nervous and they're going to leave. I'll have nothing to sell. If my key employees find out that I'm going to sell, they're going to interpret that I'm being disloyal to our culture. I'm being disloyal to their hard work and their effort to build a magnificent family business. So I'll do nothing. I'll do nothing. That becomes the plan. The plan becomes nothing. Folks, you can invite your key employee into a meeting. I would encourage you to do this next week when you go back to your offices. Do not delay. Invite your key employees in and say, listen, I heard a speaker and he suggested that I have this conversation with you. One day, newsflash, I will not be here. I don't know, and I sure hope it's not next year, but I think I'm going to live long, but I don't know. Every day, 7,000 people in this country die every single day. Last week, yesterday, tomorrow, 7,000 people. Every single day. So I don't know, but what I do know, and what the speaker really reinforced was that if something, God forbid, should happen to me, I want to make sure that this business moves forward. I want to know, key employee, whether or not you want to risk your capital with the view of acquiring control of this business one day. I'm not saying tomorrow, but I'm saying notionally, would you be interested in being an owner? You're a very good employee, but are you interested in being an owner? And you can have this conversation with your kids as well. Your kids need to have this conversation with you. Because your kids, if you're in this room, I know what you're thinking. When are we going to have this conversation? When am I going to get my hand on the lever? When am I going to get control? How am I going to get control? Is there a will? Who's in it? Am I going to be in business with my brothers and sisters, or am I the only guy in the business? Am I going to get this business? You can have these conversations and you can say to your key employee, look, I would like to get an employment contract that's put into place that says in the event that this business is sold, and if you don't want to buy it, that you will stick around for at least a year and help me transition this business into the hands of a new owner. I need your help. And I would ask that you keep this conversation confidential. I'm not suggesting that I'm not suggesting, folks, that you all run back home and start pounding for sale signs on your front lawn of your business. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is a philosophy. It is an acknowledgement of the most obvious fact in life. You will walk out your front door one day. And I just want you today to make that day a day that you choose. That you choose that day. You choose that price. You choose that buyer. That you make that day a day that you celebrate because it's your idea. It's not a day you trip over because you got sick. It's a day that you want. That is deliberate business leadership. business leadership, much like over here in the family, where leadership of the family is expressed in terms of family meetings where we sit down and we talk about this stuff. By the way, folks, nice problem to have, right? A little perspective here. We're talking about family meetings about the division of family wealth. There are worse problems to have. There are worse problems to have. It is not a problem. Let's view family wealth as an opportunity to enrich relationships. Let's get the elephants out of the room. If you have concerns about the capacity or the passion of your children to take over your business, then deal with it. Have that conversation. Chances are your kids are having the same frustrations. Maybe they're dentists, or they want to be financial planners or farmers or something completely unrelated to what your business is. Find out. One of the greatest gifts that I received from my father had nothing to do with money, quite literally. In 2002, when I'm driving to our office, and I know what questions are waiting for me, the 12 questions in every family's business in my first book. I know question number 3 is, Tom, do you want to risk your capital with the view of acquiring this business? And I know I'm going to choke out an answer, and it's not going to be the one he's ever heard before. And in 2002, I choked it out all right. We're sitting in the boardroom, and he was at the head of the boardroom table. I was just off to his left, and I said, no, I no longer wanted to borrow money from the bank to borrow his business. And this is what his response was. He raised his left hand, he high-fived me, and he said, that's the right business decision. I wouldn't buy it either. Now, I had no idea at the time what a magnificent gesture and gift it was for a son to receive from his father. But I'll tell you, it is, to this day, moves me. It is a profound gift. From that day forward, we worked together collaboratively to sell that business. And we did an amazing job. We sold that business in February 2007, about 15 minutes before the capital markets melted down. Our industry, the Canadian plastics industry, American plastic industry, our Chinese competitors, the whole industry melted down. It was a complete disaster. Had I not received that kind of response from my father, I'd be sitting in a business right now trying to run it with a boat anchor around my neck. It would have been near impossible to run that family business successfully. It certainly would be a fraction of the size. But because our family culture allows all of us to exercise, the next generation to exercise who they really authentically are, to have that space to be who they are, we led ourselves to a liquidity event one more time, the 4th time in our family that we've started businesses and sold them near the peak of their enterprise value. Is something that I share in this book. It's a message that I share with you today. It's a message that I hope you take back to your communities and share it with the folks at the marina, the folks at the golf course. This is an important message because it is awfully lonely being a business owner, thinking that your only succession plan is to gift your business to a child. It is a lonely place when we paint ourselves into a corner and we have no way out. Let me wrap up and say this. The greatest generation of wealth creators are sitting in this room in this industry. There is no doubt, and the data is absolutely compelling, you have created more money than any other generation, certainly more money than your own parents. We know you're smart, we know you're entrepreneurial, we know you're creative, we know you're hardworking, we know all that stuff. And your balance sheets don't lie. That you've had a couple of tough years, so what? You're still here. You've made money like no other generation. The real test of your genius and your commitment to your family and your community will be how you leave your surplus when you're not here. I encourage you, I challenge you, I hope for you that you take what you've heard today back to your own family, your own community, that you start these conversations, that you don't make perfection the goal. You just make a goodwill, a good conversation, and a good family a part of what's important to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love, we've got a couple of minutes for some quick questions. Don't be shy. Many of you know each other, so this is a little bit of an awkward subject because we're talking about family businesses and family money. So if you have a question, preface it with, I have a friend. I'm going to repeat the questions, so go ahead.
What's the success rate on
So the question is, what's the success rate on fourth generation family businesses? The number is so small. The number is so small I can't find it. Seriously, if you Google fourth generation family businesses success rate, you won't get an answer. It's so small. I thought I would find that number by narrowing my search and say to the farming industry. Farmers really struggle with my message, you can imagine. But even there, the success rate, especially now, farming is going through an absolute revolution. It's really, really tiny. The problem with third and fourth generation family businesses is there's so many kids, right? Founder, 2 kids, it grows exponentially. So the time you get down to the fourth generation, you're talking like 60 family members, ex-wives. It's crazy. It's crazy. And we keep doing, right? We keep on dividing the shares equally. So they just keep on getting bigger and unwieldy. Yeah. Can you have a family meeting without a professional advisor? Yes. Some of the best family meetings are not in oak paneled boardrooms. They're at the dock. They're around a campfire where dad says, look, I just want to bring everyone up to date. It doesn't have to be this kind of solemn, morbid, depressing event. It says, look, you know what? I'm getting a little bit older, and I want to just bring you guys up to date, but I have a couple of questions for you. What would you do with your inheritance? We miss the forest for the trees. What a great question. I think you'll learn a ton. And these are really beautiful questions to start really amazing storytelling and conversations in your family about money. I'll tell you right now, whatever wealth you leave your kids, the memories from these meetings will be far more valuable than the money you leave. Yeah.
Second generation family business, 3 brothers in the business, all managers.
I'll repeat the question.
Flexible CEO type setup right now. We had a planner transition it from my dad to us. We've tripled the business since 08. We want to take it to higher aspirations, and we do want to sell. The one key question is, we get to a struggling point that we've all looked at and said, wow, we're taking this profit, one company, you divide it by 3, it's a hard, you look at that number and go, wow, gee, I was hoping for a bigger number because we looked at that number as one corporate number. It's a huge number. Now you divide it by 3. Any direction on how to keep that growing to sell this business like you guys did? You got together and said, okay, this is our direction we want to go. How do we facilitate that conversation?
Okay, so let me repeat the question. So we have a business. We have 3 brothers. It's growing. They've had a really good track record. Notionally, they agree that they want to sell one day, but they're looking at that sale number right now. And when you chop it into 3, it's not a big enough number. Let me continue on with your logic. What a lot of business owners will say, particularly in a low interest rate environment, they'll say, boy, I could sell my business for $10 million. And then if I were to kind of invest the proceeds, I'm going to get 3% because I don't want to get into risky stocks and bonds and all that sort of stuff. So I get 3%. That's $300,000. I'm going to pay my tax. I can't live on that. So I'll keep doing. And then he's 74, and then he's 75, and then he's 85, and then he's 95, and then he's like, and then what happens is he dies, and the business, that $10 million business, it grinds to zero, or it gets vastly devalued because there's no operator. They wait too long. So I wish I could say the magic formula is take your age times this number, and it's a little bit, you got to be lucky, but you got to be very, very acutely aware of where your business is in its life cycle, or taking into consideration local market conditions, what's going on in your business, how resilient is it. I'm not just talking about economic cycles, I'm talking about big threats to your business that could come out of left field, a fire, something that could really devalue that business. So every day you're in business and concentrating your wealth in your operating business, you're taking a huge risk. No different than concentrating your wealth in the New York Stock Exchange and rolling the dice on one stock. It's one business, it's one stock. I think the gentleman right behind you. Yeah.
Hear me?
Yep.
Hello? As a typical small business owner, most of my assets are tied up in the business. As a typical small business, most of my assets are tied up in my business. I have two children. One of them very passionate about coming into the business, the other one very passionate about doing anything else. How do I equitably split that at the end if everything is tied up in the business? How do I take care of the one child who is entitled to, say, half of the wealth generated by me, but doesn't really feel it?
That is a great question. Let me repeat it. So we have a gentleman, he's got a business. He's got two children, one who's passionate in the business, one who wants to do anything but the family business. And the question is, how do we treat the children equitably? So this is going to show up in the family meeting. Here's a great conversation and a great technique for all of you. So in the context of a family meeting, you would sit your two kids down and you would say, your mother and I have decided that we would like to give you each $1,000. It's a gift. It's called a living gift. Okay, here's $1,000. By the way, kids, our business is for sale. What would they do with $1,000? One would give it back to you in exchange for $1,000 worth of shares, and the other one would take the $1,000 and do something else. Great. Keep going. 5,000, 10,000. Watch the money. Risk is crucial to the transition of a family business. It's a step that we skip when we give things, when we give operating businesses to kids. Or if we leave the subject of the stock alone and we shroud it in secrecy, then the child outside the family business will look at the child inside the family business and they'll start to make assumptions that they're going to get more because that's where the family money is. And you and your wife will be scratching your head on why the kids aren't getting along. I'm not suggesting they don't get along now, but as time goes on, particularly as they get married and they have spouses, particularly if one marries a lawyer, they're going to be, it's the silence that will grind on your family. But when you sit your kids down in the context of a family business and say, look, working in the family business is different than owning the family business. If you want to own the family business, you need to buy it. Now, your mother and I can talk to you and help you structure a deal. You can take some money out of your business as a dividend or as cash, as salary, and you can loan it to your kids, and they can buy the business, and you can communicate that to the child outside the business. You see how we're wiring this? You see how we're asking one of your children to take risk, to risk their inheritance, to purchase your business? They will not do it unless they love the business, unless they think they're capable of taking that business and growing it. The assumption of risk is crucial to your family and your business success. Probably more your family success than your business success. Yeah.
I heard there's a formula to kind of determine the value of your business when you go to sell it. Is there some type of formula?
Is there a formula for determining the value of a business when you sell it? Most people who acquire businesses will take a multiple of something called EBITDA, your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. EBITDA, ask your accountant what your EBITDA is. It's just an expression of your free cash flow. And someone who buys your business will buy it for either 2 or 3, or if there's a range. I would suspect right now, marine dealers are probably going for between 2 and 5 EBITDA. Really times your EBITDA number. So they would take 5 times your free cash flow to get a number. Okay? Now, if you've got a lot of people who really want your business because it's an awesome business, you've got growth, you've got brand, you've got great management, you've got job descriptions, performance reviews, low turnover, high margins. Like you're a rock star. And you've got multiple people wanting to own you because your reputation of your awesomeness is well known across the land. Multiple people bidding for your business will do what to the price? It goes up. It's not going to happen by accident. You got to work it. You got to get involved in these types of events, meet as many dealers as possible, because the best price is usually going to come from a competitor. They're going to overpay for your business because they can, post-acquisition, they can move very quickly to unlock value. They don't need 2 accounts receivables, 2 account payable people, 2 clerks. They just have 1. So that's why they overpay. That's why your best deal is going to come from outside the family. It's going to come from a strategic buyer, a competitor. Yeah, right at the back.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah, so at the age of 5, I attended my first family meeting. We were never asked to leave our family meeting when the accountants were reporting on various businesses, their earnings, that sort of thing. We had no idea what was going on, but year after year, we'd slowly piece things together. We'd hear stories. We heard about plants burning down. You know, my grandfather's plant burned down. He rebuilt. He borrowed money. Like, we are really connected to our parents' and grandparents' money because we know the story. We know how difficult it was for them to earn that. There's no shortcut. There's no easy money in our family. It's always been hard. And those stories we absorbed year after year after year. So most people, when I ask them when they're going to share their net worth with their kids, they always invariably answer 20, when they're 25, when they're 30, 35, or when they're 40 years old. Never 27, 32, 36. Always increments of 5. And of course, those 35 and 40 comes, and they still never. Kids today, will still learn today in Orlando, sitting in some lawyer's office, what they're going to get. And they'll have loads of questions, and the lawyer will sit there and go, I have no idea why they did what they did, but that's what the will says. And it'll be just a huge lost opportunity. At 13, I knew for certain that there was a job waiting for me in the family business. But at 13, I sure as hell knew that working in the family business did not mean me owning the family business. We drive a wedge between employment income and ownership. They are completely different. I have a brother who lives in Indiana, older brother in Indiana. My father would fly to Indiana every year and ask my brother the same 12 questions. I'm the president of the family business, and my father is flying to Indiana to ask my brother if he wants to buy the family business. And my brother would say, well, like I said last year and the previous 5 years, no, but thanks for flying down. You know why my father would do that? Because he was reminding my brother, who my brother knew that because he attends the family meetings, that I was buying the business. But he was still extending the option for him to buy the business as well. My brother knew clearly that me owning the business was different than me running the business. That I was the president didn't mean that I had some kind of discount on the shares or some kind of sneaky fast route to get the shares. Ownership is different than employment income, and families mix it up all the time. Now, my brother knows I'm borrowing money from the bank, and the shares are going up in value, and the money goes to my parents, and the money comes back down to my brother and I because my parents share their wills with us. We have copies. My brother and I are co-executors. So I'm giving my parents money, lots of it, in exchange for company shares. What's my brother in Indiana saying as he's watching me run the family business? Go, Tom, go. Go, Tom, go. Sibling rivalry, it's a disgrace. There's no need for it. And the problem is usually with parents who let this idea of the shares being gifted through a will simmer on the back burner. And no one knows how that business is going to transition. It's a big mystery. And the parents keep the kids off balance, and no one really knows, and everyone starts to make assumptions about who's going to get what and how and when. And it's driving and tearing families apart from the inside out, really naively. I'm not suggesting that there's some nefarious plot to destroy families. It's done so innocently and naively. Liz is going to talk about that like in 30 seconds. Yeah. So the question is, what if you have a family meeting, you have 3 kids and only 2 want to attend? That is valuable information. Keep extending the invitation. Their lack of attendance informs the family culture. Never give up. Never give up. But would I leave a third to someone who is indifferent, and you're reaching out in a very honest, committed way to bring the family together through conversation? Would I name that person as the executor of my will, who would have legal powers to oversee my advanced health care directives? Probably not. Probably not. But I would keep working at it. I think using an annual family meeting and the discussion of money to bring families together to right whatever is ailing the family. By the way, no family is perfect. Not mine, not yours. They are complex organizational structures, but they take work. Perfection is not the goal, just a better family than you have today. All right, folks. I don't know about you, but that was fun for me. Thank you very much.